Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from H-E-B Texas Backyard, helping to beautify your backyard. From patio sets to Texas Tough landscape plants, let H-E-B Texas Backyard help you get your garden started today.
Hi there and welcome to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. These days we hear from a lot of gardeners who want to know how to grow aloes and other drought-hardy succulents. Today Jeff Pavlat from the Austin Cactus and Succulent Society shows off a few aloes and explains how to grow them. On tour, let's take a look at his incredible garden design with cacti and succulents.
Even in drought and in deer country, Jeff Pavlat spends more time collecting plants and dividing them for friends than caring for them. Sure, like any plants, his cacti and succulents need some maintenance, along with gardener sensibility to their favored setting. And they get moved around when Jeff has a new idea for them or that spot. But most of the time, they simply grace the hillside that used to wash onto the driveway in a rainstorm. It all started when he and partner Ray Clayton tackled a problematic slope near the house.
It was kind of a learn-as-you-go thing. We both were learning how to use mortar and work with stone. Built a pond, and after a while doing that, then we decided to get more adventurous and start working on all of the walls in the rest of the garden. And there really wasn't an overall vision initially on what it was going to be. There was just a few walls that we needed to keep soil from rolling down, and it sort of expanded and expanded and expanded into what you see today. There was sort of this hole where the pond is now, and I tried to landscape it with stuff that was a little bit shady. But looking at it, it was like it just seemed like the perfect place to put a water feature. It's a little bit different in that it's mostly above ground. You just can't really tell it. But we built that in there and thought it was a great addition. We moved on to starting with the rest of the garden just to fix this hillside kept rolling down into our driveway. So we started building the retaining walls, and then I started getting more and more into the plants and landscaping. I've really liked agaves and aloes and cactus and things. For a long time, I had a few little potted plants here and there, and I would sit them around for years. But then when I started landscaping here, first of all, the deer will eat almost everything. And that's an area where I could plant most anything I wanted, and I don't have to worry about the deer eating them. Also, I don't have to water the garden, and that's a big plus. The more I work with the plants, the more I found that I've enjoyed them. On the cacti and stuff, I like the look of the spines. I don't like the feel of them so much gardening around them, but they are, I think, really attractive. Gives you a lot of real strong shapes to work with.
But like with any plants, styling them produces harmonious design. Because
they have strong shapes, you have to be careful not to put too many of the same shapes in even patterns. Odd groupings of things tend to work the best. And trying to just get a balance and mix of different colors, and usually I try to throw in other textures. One thing, when I do get a new batch of plants in, I move them around and leave them first in their pots, kind of try to see what looks the best, and I spend a fair bit of time before I actually start digging and putting them in. But a big advantage of cacti and succulents are you can move them around. As long as you can physically dig it up and move it, it doesn't matter how big it is. They don't mind. They can sit for days out of soil. They ship easily. So if you want to move it from one end of the garden and then wait until you get a bed ready on the other end, you can do that. So it's easy to kind of work it around. It's not like if you dig it up, it's going to just keel over and die. And the more I got into the plants, finding out what I could grow in the ground, I'm just naturally a collector of things. So I started collecting all the different types I could find, and then of course I started moving into the things that I couldn't grow without a greenhouse. And I had everything across in front of the pond. I had about 300 plants at one time, just all different things that weren't cold hardy that I'd pull in and out in the winter. And then I got caught one day when it froze before I got home. I found out what would freeze and what wouldn't, but after that I was like, I definitely need the greenhouse. So once I got the greenhouse, that sort of opened up. It's like I had to fill it.
For some that are semi-hardy, he just builds a mini greenhouse around them. At the top of the property, Jeff and Ray hauled more stones to build a staircase and upper story patio. Following the hillside's terrain, they connected it to the lower levels.
I really like millstone fountains, and so that was something I wanted to incorporate into another garden area. And the other thing I was wanting to build was a place to put my aloes. So when I got to designing that area, that's one of the last areas along the front to do. By that point, I had done enough rock work and stuff that I knew pretty well what I was doing. I really do like Japanese gardens and that sort of Zen design, and although it's not in any way adhering to any strict Japanese principles, it's, sort of, I think it gets that feel a little bit with the gravel. And then, I wanted to have the bubbling millstone. And it just sort of evolved that way. I did a lot of drawings for that area before I actually started building. The general shape of the area was dictated by the way the cliff runs along the front of the property, and then I just went from there.
With cardboard concrete tubing, he made inexpensive pedestals for his container plants. Their last project, at least until the next inspiration hits, are the steps he and Ray built to connect a cactus garden near the greenhouse to the play area they built for their son, Clayton. He helped too.
When our son was born, he would sit in his little stroller out when we finished the last section where the aloes are planted. And he had a lot of fun when he was little out, helping out too.
Before he was 6, Clayton had become a plant collector himself.
He has his own shelf in my greenhouse, and he'll go to the show and sale and he'll pick out plants he wants to buy. I've heard a lot of people that worry about these plants with small children. My son was born with all of these plants, and their children are pretty careful. It's older people that have to generally watch out. I do snip the tips off of the really sharp agaves and things that are eye level, both for me now and also, for him, because I don't want any serious injury like that. But in general, you just keep your hands out of them, and it's fine. For our club, one of the big selling points is the fact that the plants are so easy to grow. For most people that say that they can't grow plants, one of the issues is water. And I myself have this problem. I can kill a fern so fast. But on a plant that needs water once a week, once every 3 weeks, it's really easy to take care of. I mean, it's fairly low maintenance. And I think that's easy for a lot of people. It's like, for really active people, I'm going to go away for a week. I don't have to have anyone come water my plants. And I mean, I think they're they're very exotic also in a lot of ways.
Now, from the garden and into the studio, we're now joined by Jeff Pavlat here in the studio to talk about aloes, one of the plant specialties in your amazing garden, Jeff. Absolutely stunning place. Thank you so much for opening up your garden to us.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. I can tell you're a real passionate collector of plants. Tell me how you got involved in the cacti and succulents. What was it that drew you to that plant family?
I mean, I started out, I've had an interest in cacti for a long time, just, you know, 1 or 2 in pots when I started out. But when I moved to my house and started trying to landscape, I realized the deer were going to eat anything that I put in the ground if it wasn't really tough. And then with water also. So it was really the combination of the deer and then wanting things that are drought tolerant. And that's how I got started with the whole garden. And then once I got that planted, I started discovering, in my search for interesting things to go in the garden, the Cactus and Succulent Society. And I found there was a whole world of other things, and I got a greenhouse. You know, then it just really snowballed. Where now it's like I'm cramming plants in and could really use a second greenhouse. But
well, people get addicted to different things. That's okay. You can just accept that addiction. But there are some really striking qualities about these plants that really make them pop out, that make them special. What's your favorite thing about the aloes?
I've kind of really been attracted to plants that have the symmetry of a rosette, which I also like agaves a lot. You know, there are a lot of those in my garden. Aloes, just the really strong form, and I mean, I think they're really beautiful, the variation in the colors and textures. I mean, that pretty much goes for all of the different succulents I like, but in particular, the rosette form is what I like about aloes.
We're surrounded by beautiful plants that you've brought to the studio today, and we're going to be talking about those. And I know that a lot of these plants also bloom, which is something that is a very attractive feature that and most people don't think of when they think of aloes.
And they do have quite striking blooms. I think when it comes to aloe, most people are familiar with aloe vera, which has to be fairly large in size before it'll bloom. So people have a hard time in a pot in the house getting it to do that. But aloe blooms will last for weeks. They also tend to bloom, a big chunk of them bloom in the wintertime, which is nice. You get some color. And, you know, there's such a huge range of sizes, too. I mean, there's an aloe that would fit almost anybody's garden. I mean, they range from little tiny things to giant tree forms.
Well, more and more people are interested in the aloes. As our climate has gotten warmer and our winters milder, a lot of these plants can be grown in the ground now. We want to, before we dive in and talk about the plants, just real briefly talk about the fact that people can learn about a lot of these species and actually pick up some of the rare and unusual things that we're going to be showing at the Austin Cactus and Succulent Society show and sale. And that's happening Labor Day weekend, is that right?
Labor Day weekend. We have a sale twice a year, one in April, usually the second weekend, and then a 3-day show, Labor Day weekend every year. And we have free literature we give out. We have 7 or 8 vendors that sell a whole range of plants. Several of them come from out of state. So it's a good place to find things you're not going to find locally.
Okay, well, let's dive in and show some of these cool plants that people will be able to probably find something close to a lot of the things that you're going to be showing. The first plant that we're going to be talking about, this is one of the few that has a common name that we can use, and it's a big broadleaf aloe. This is very striking.
That is called the coral aloe, or Aloe striata. It comes from South Africa. It's one of the more cold hardy aloes. You can grow it in the ground if your temperatures are going to stay probably in the mid-20s. If you don't have a long period of freezing weather, I mean, and if it is going to be much below mid-20s, you might want to throw a towel over it. But it has beautiful coral red flowers, and they stay in bloom for up to a month and a half.
Okay. Coral aloe or aloe striata. Okay. Beautiful plant, and again, I really like that bold foliage on it, the big broad leaf on a very beautiful plant. Immediately next to it, gorgeous plant with well-armed, as many of them are.
And that one is Aloe porphyrostachys, and it's kind of a mouthful. That aloe actually comes from Saudi Arabia, and that's about full size. That one blooms for me every year. I'm not really sure about cold hardiness on it. I haven't tried it out in the ground. I keep it in a pot. But one nice thing about aloes, you can get plants like that. They'll grow fine outside most of the year. You can put it in your garden in a pot. You can bring it up next to the house or on a patio, just to keep it a little bit warmer during the winter time.
Right.
So you can work with them outside, even if you're not going to try to put it in the ground.
Yeah, and well, I keep mine in containers, and then during the wintertime, I just move them up underneath an eave, and I've never had a problem with that.
Because a number of the aloes can handle freezing temperatures for brief periods. If you're in an area that's going to stay below freezing for an extended period, if they're not protected, they will turn to mush.
Right.
Generally, they would start freezing from the tip back.
Right.
And even if it does get some burn on the plants, usually they will grow out of it. They grow fairly quickly.
Yeah. Tough plants, and again, more adapted to Austin than we would have imagined just a few years ago. Let's continue our tour, Jeff. There's a number of plants right next to you that are really striking, including this little tiny dwarf one that I really like that.
This one here, and it's actually very soft. It looks a little meaner than it is. That one is Aloe haworthioides, which it's named for looking like another close aloe relative, the haworthias. This is full size. This is several plants. It just clumps, and it comes from Madagascar. And
beautiful little plant.
It's very different looking. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even realize that was an aloe.
True, true. And again, a lot of the botanical names, they don't have common names, and I want to let people know that on our website we'll have all of these listed, so they can go to klru.org/ctg to learn about all these plants. The tall one next to that is particularly striking, and that looks like it will grow to a tree form.
This one does. This is Aloe ramosissima. It grows primarily in South Africa. It makes a large shrub. It could be 6 or 7 feet tall, I believe. It grows fairly slow. I mean, I've had this plant for 5 or 6 years, and it's about doubled in size. So it's not something that's going to get away from you.
Right.
It's probably one that's best in a container. It's not that cold hardy.
It's a
attractive plant for a container.
And the one immediately adjacent to it as well as a nice strappy look, you know, not as regular a form, but but that's nice. It's nice to have the variation.
This is one that clumps quite a bit. This is Aloe cameronii, and it comes from Zimbabwe, Malawi, some countries around there. A lot of aloes come from Africa, primarily Africa, and then on up into Arabia. And the red color on this one, this will be green if it's given a lot of water, but when stressed, it takes on this red color. So if you want to get that color in some of your plants, don't water them very much and give them a lot of sun.
Okay. Well, Jeff, I want to let people know that we are running out of time. So I want just the form on this one was so striking. I wanted people to see it. We don't need to talk about it as a plant, but remind us again about the cactus, the show and sale, so that people can be sure to go in and get some of these incredible plants. Okay. The sale will be Labor Day weekend. It runs from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the evening, and it's a 3-day show, so all 3 days. And we have a number of club members that will be there to answer questions. And we'll have information on the Central Texas Gardener website about that. I can't thank you enough. These are gorgeous plants. Your garden is spectacular. Thanks for sharing all of this great information with us. Thanks for having me. Coming up next is our friend Skip Richter.
Hello and welcome to Down to Earth. This week's question regards salvias that are just not blooming very well. You may have noticed your salvia greggii and some other re-blooming salvias are not looking too good in the summer. They often get rather woody and not as, let's say, floriferous as you'd like them to be. This is easy to remedy. These are subshrubs, and they often will grow up and into a rather woody state, losing their energy if they're not properly cared for. If you will shear them back by about 1/3, put a little fertilizer around them, just a sprinkling, and water it in really well, you'll invigorate the plants. They'll put on new growth because the blooms occur on the terminal ends of that growth. So as you create new growth and a lot of new terminals growing, that'll be followed then by another nice bloom cycle. So if you've got some salvia greggii or other woody ornamentals like that that just tend to bloom themselves out, try a little summer shearing followed by fertilizing and watering, and you can get those blooms back going again quite well. This week's featured plant is Thryallis. Thryallis is one of my favorite plants and still quite underused throughout our area. It has yellow blooms that go virtually all through the summer season and as well as spring and fall. Thryallis just continues to bloom and bloom and bloom, and until we have some really cold weather, those blooms will continue to come on. The plants can get rather large, 6 feet or more in time, but if you'll shear them periodically, you can keep them in a smaller size or tend to shape them a little bit if you like. It does well in sun, but it also blooms pretty well in partial shade. This is a plant that deer don't tend to prefer, although they'll eat about anything when they're hungry. But Thryallis is a good plant for our area. It's heat tolerant, its ability to take some drought, the fact that it blooms in sun and shade, a little bit of deer resistance, gosh, what else can we ask for? Continues to grow right through the summer season. Things in the garden to do, well, we want to first of all make sure we're watering our turf properly. A good soaking on an infrequent basis is what we want to do. A little sprinkling every day just promotes diseases on the turf, but a good soaking gets water down in the soil where it's in that bank account that the plant can draw on later on. Any weeds that are starting to get in the garden beds, you need to take care of them early. I know it's not fun to weed in the heat of summer, but a little early morning mulching and weeding here and there can help your plants a lot. Watch for chinch bugs. They'll soon be arriving in our lawns as well. For more tips, to get in touch with the Extension office in your area, visit klru.org/CTG.
Thanks, Skip. Now let's check in with John Dromgoole for Backyard Basics.
Hello gardening friends, welcome to Backyard Basics. As the different seasons change, we find that the things that we need for the garden, whether it's flowers or vegetable transplants, sometimes aren't always the ones that we're looking for. You go in the nurseries and there's pretty much typical same things with a few new introductions. But when you look at the seed rack, you realize most of these aren't available in the nurseries, and yet they're beautiful, well-adapted plants for the area. So as I plan my garden, this is a little way that I'd like to look at it. I took a look at what's already there, and then I began to plan the spaces that I want to fill for that season. So I want to start my own seeds for that too. So what I do is, one of the best things is earthworm castings. If you have that in your seed mix, you get a much better stand of the seeds, real even and more vigorous and healthier than if you use those little peat pots or something like that. As you can see right now, this okra here is growing very well. It's very vigorous, and it's in this mix that I'm going to share with you right now. And so what I like to use is equal amounts of these 3 ingredients. Earthworm castings. God, this is a really nice little product right here. And then a little bit of dairy cow manure. Another real nice product, and you can see the texture of these is really nice and even. And then granite sand for the drainage that it provides. And granite sand, the cow manure, and the earthworm castings are mixed in equal amounts. And you'll get a beautiful little product like this one right here. Nice, even, pretty. And so what I do is fill up the cells right here. This is the best way to do this. We'll fill up all of the different cells, and then we get our seeds, the special ones that we're looking for, and we'll go through here and plant it. I've seen some of the best growth that I've ever seen when I mix those earthworm castings in. As you can see in this picture right here, this transplant, it has a nice root system in just a few days. It really has a nice, pretty root system, and you can see the vigor that it's growing in. And so this other picture right here is when we take it apart and you take a look at that massive root system that's in there. You don't even see that in the nursery transplants, a nice vigorous growth, and even in the nursery plants, they don't have earthworm castings. Very few people do that. And that's another advantage of doing it yourself. You get the earthworm castings, the dairy cow manure, and the granite sand, and you'll have one of the very best mixes. For me, it's one of the best ones I've tried. And I've been trying this for many, many years. And so we'll take our little transplants. For example, some of these seeds, maybe the Chinese cabbage, won't be on the market till later on. And you want to get a jump start because you can start earlier than the ones that are provided by the nurseries. So we'll take something like these cabbage right here. Swiss chard, always an easy one to grow, comes up very vigorously. Some of the lettuce for the different seasons, or whether it's your tomatoes or your peppers, or any of these plants. You can start them in this seed pot right here. And within about a 10-day period, maybe a little bit more with some seeds, you see that nice, vigorous growth, an even germination in there, and it's all because of that secret, the earthworm castings. One of the best seed starters you can do. I saw some research recently from the Ohio State University, and they had some tests, And there were some mixes that didn't have any earthworm castings. And then there was another blend that had 20%, and then another one with 40%. And they found that the two that had the mix, and it didn't make any difference what the ratio was, the plants were, once again, very vigorous plants. And when they were tested in a little box with the introduction of aphids or other insects in there, they did not attack the plants because they were so healthy. Usually insects are taking down the weaker species, and so there was a great jump. And when you get a hardy, healthy start in the beginning, the plants stay that way. They stay really nice. And you can take those earthworm castings and you put them into the soil. And if you're seeding directly into the garden, you mix a little bit of those earthworm castings under each of the seeds, and they get off equally well. All seeds don't have to go start in little containers. They can be seeded directly. And once again, you can take advantage of a jump start and a healthy, vigorous start by adding a few earthworm castings to each of the seeds. So you can see that in the organic garden, we've got a lot of different things that get us off to one of the best starts that you could with your seeding process for any of the seasons. For Backyard Basics, I'm John Dromgoole. I'll see you next time.
Check out klru.org/CTG for more tips, online video, and our weekly blog. Until next week, I'll see you in the garden. Visit klru.org/CTG to learn more about today's program, upcoming events, and to sign up for our electronic newsletter. Check out John's how-to tips and visit Trish's Corner for ideas inside and out. Get growing at klru.org/CTG.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from HEB Texas Backyard, helping to beautify your backyard. From patio sets to Texas tough landscape plants, let HEB Texas Backyard help you get your garden started today.